Welcome to the Otaku Time Machine, a show that takes you through the anime archives of yesteryears. I'm your captain, Frankfurter, and with me today we have Drew Tendo64 and Magically Average. How are you fellas doing?
Pretty good.
Better now that we figured out that Drew's not talking through a potato.
Yeah,
Yay!
that's fair. Yeah, no, before recording, Drew was talking, and I think it was probably through a monitor or a webcam or something. It just
Yeah.
sounded like
Discarded
he
bag
was,
of Doritos.
yeah, like it was back in the Xbox 360 years where you just use the preset headset. But whatever, it's fine. We are here to talk about anime. We're not here to talk about Drew's shitty potato mic. Today, we are talking about Terror and Resonance, the 2014 thriller anime. Now, this was something that none of us had watched previously. This is something that was on my to watch list for the longest time. It's one of those things that I had seen like snippets here and there, and I'm like, okay, this seems like an interesting show. How's it going to pan out? What is this even about? Because the front of the the as you can see if you're watching the video portion, the poster or teaser poster for or visual for this is pretty bleak. It's buildings on fire, rubble everywhere, and then three teenagers, and you're like, what the hell is this all about? And let's just start with just kind of overall thoughts before we kind of get into like more structured, intro, outro, setting, character, yet. Like, what did you all think about this show, just kind of from an overall perspective, spoiler free?
Well, it's it's an interesting take on I guess terrorism, domestic terrorism,
Yeah.
if you can say that. Because usually you're gonna see it from like there's a good guy, there's a bad guy, so they do a very good job of blurring that line. And overall, like it's intriguing enough that it kept me watching each episode. But eventually, I shared with the guys that I sped up my last few episodes just because I was like, I just need to see this resolved. Yeah. But overall, I still had fun.
You had fun with terrorism. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't we all? Um I for a topic that has really no positive angles to it. It's all negative. It's all bleak and quite frankly distasteful, I think, in any sort of media. It did a good job of putting it in a different light and not having it be just like grim, grotesque, like acts of violence, I guess I would say. I don't know. It's weird. It's weird to jump around the hoops of being like, our anime is about terrorism. It's like, cool. Uh, Probably going to go over here now. Nice to meet you. It did a good job of it, though, which was surprising. And it made it actually the whole story very, very entertaining towards the end, too. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. For me, it was one of those things of just like, okay, this is blatant like active domestic terrorism in Japan. Like, what the hell is going on? Why are they doing this? And as the story unravels, and not necessarily plot twists, because I feel like there weren't too many plot twists to this show. It was more so
Yeah.
just let's unravel the story as we go. And you can kind of figure out as certain things from inference and whatnot, like when they show early on. So I think that overall it was a very great watch. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was one of those things. I woke up one morning and was just like, okay, I'm just gonna watch all 11 episodes in just one go. And I didn't feel the need to just take a break or anything because each episode was well paced. Each episode was very well done. There was no meaningless episode. There wasn't like a just kind of a throwaway episode. Everything was very meaningful
It's the beach
and just
episode. Yay!
yeah, there was no beach episode, there was no, like, training arc episode. Granted, this isn't the type there's no training arc for how to be a terrorist, but, yeah, no, like, it was a thoroughly good show in my opinion. So, with that overall thoughts, let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about the intro and outro sequences. I don't know about y'all. Well, I kinda do know about we kinda semi-discussed this, but, in my opinion, the intro, outro sequences were just they were just credits to me. There was nothing good about them, there was nothing bad about them, they were just credits.
Yeah.
Mid,
They
like
they
Yeah.
took they
There
took
was
like
the song is forgettable.
yeah.
Well, they took
And
the weirdest songs too. Like they're like which ones don't fit the vibes completely. They're like these two, like excellent.
Slow
Put them in.
melodic, slow melodic tones. Like let's.
Yeah. Well, because I think the first episode, because sometimes like the older anime, your first episode will just get intro right at the beginning. You don't
Yeah.
have like an opening sequence, or sorry, you have like an opening sequence of the anime, and then you get your intro with the song and everything. I don't think Terror and Resonance did that. So like you had like the explosions at the beginning, and then like you're like, what's going on? And then it's just like slow, like you kind of want to dance, like just kind of move your arms around, and you're like, what the fuck is
Like
happening?
a slow motion, wacky waving
Yeah.
inflatable tomb.
No, it's
guy.
like it's like Squidward in the episode where he does like the talent show, and he's just like doing like the weird like tentacle movements. I'm just like, these are so unfitting. But thankfully, didn't judge the entire series based off of the intro and outro, because otherwise it would have been doggy doo doo based on just those
Yeah.
alone.
Drew, you in the same boat?
100%. I skipped the opening on every episode except the first. I skipped the ending on every episode except the first.
Yep.
And the song is very sleep inducing. It's not, I don't feel like it's on par for the content of the show. Like I know it's apples to oranges, but when you watch a show like Gundam, even if it is Iron-Blooded Orphans where it is a little bit more story heavy, like their intros still get you hyped.
Like
Even
if,
though
yeah,
it's going to
if you
be
were
an episode of talking, yeah.
if you were to like replace it then like with a different song or different genre of music, like what would you have thrown in here?
Ooh,
Because
that's
yeah,
tough.
these are very slow, methodic songs or melodic songs rather than anything else.
Well,
And like
look at
the episodes, in my opinion, they're not like action heavy or
no,
panic inducing. They're just like they're very story heavy and they are
well,
very like
well,
kind
look
of
at
drawn out and melodic.
yeah, but look at like the opening for Ergo Proxy. Like there's episodes of Ergo Proxy that are just backstory and we got to find a book and we got to talk a lot, and even still like those intros like feel like they share the same tone as the show. Like it's a dark, interesting, like this music has its hooks, but I feel like the music for Terror was just like it ramps up as if something is going to happen in the song that it never does. It's like a song about edging, and that's all it is.
it well, and the opening like video sequence too is very. I don't know how to like describe it other than like it's very Criminal Minds, where it's just like flashing
Yeah.
images of stuff, and it's like nothing really matters all that much. We're just gonna show you weird things, and like it's a lot of misdirection.
It's of them as kids, like in
Yeah,
the
it's just like images, photos, like small short sequences of things happening. And you're just like,
birds flying.
yeah,
Like we've
like
seen
John
this
Woo
anime
film
opening before. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I usually cast aside intros for anime back then. I just mainly because like I feel like it was just kind of like, we need something. We're not gonna really put a lot of thought into it, which is fine.
I like how you're saying back then, and it's like this was 11 years ago. This wasn't that long ago.
It's 11 years ago. That's about. It's far. 11 years.
We had some good intros.
I was still
that,
in. I was still in law school. No, I was still in college at the time.
I thought you
11
were about
years
to say I
ago.
was still in diapers, you little baby boy.
Yeah, I was still in college 11
Hold
years
on.
ago.
Yeah, no, I was as well. I was in college as well. So
Yeah. So I
We
mean, like, it. I don't know. I don't think there was anything that they could have done better. Like maybe they could they could have done like the CSI Miami, and like every end of like the first part of the episode it had been like another one bites the dust, huh? And then it just goes, yeah, tears off puts the glasses on. But I don't know. It was just a throwaway. It's fine. I don't take a lot of, there's not a lot of weight
It's
to it for ones back then.
yeah, I would say both the songs and the sequences are all around inoffensive.
Yeah.
There's nothing good about them. There's nothing bad about them. They're just there. So
You can tell the series back then. I'm gonna keep saying back then. I don't care. You can tell which ones like put a lot of thought and cared about the intro because it like either meant something thematically to the anime, or it was to like Drew's point, it was just to get some like hype going, right? The intro and outro for Terran Residence was just like, let's just put something in, and maybe it'll be like again, like a red herring for like what people should expect. Like it's super slow, super melodic, a lot of just flashing images of chaotic things happening. Like maybe people will be like, oh, it's like a pure mystery drama, and it's like, no, it's gonna be like some mystery and then teenagers exploding portions of the city to rubble. It's like,
Yeah.
whatever. You can do whatever you want with that.
Fair enough. Without further ado, let's move on to our next segment. We are going to talk about the setting. Now, I really don't feel like there's much to talk about here for the fact that it is kind of a realistic Tokyo. There's really not much else to discuss there. Without getting into spoiler territory, which we'll get there shortly. So, unless y'all have something you want to talk about setting wise, I think we're
They
we're good to roll into the characters.
Yeah, the only thing I'll point out is that they do make it a very clear statement right at the beginning. Like, this is an alternate universe for Tokyo. Like, this is not
Yeah.
set in our universe, which is probably something that was warranted given that this happened after like 9/11 and everything, right? So there's like the acts of global terrorism during this time were still still are today, right? Like serious concerns. So having an anime be about the same type of topic, we'll say, is a little scary to a lot of people. So they like made it very clear, like, this is not your world. This is an alternate
Yeah.
reality.
And this was also before the Kyoto animation incident as well.
Yeah.
So
That too.
it's a kind of a good note to say, like, yeah, no, this is the alternate version. They're different buildings. This is just, our story that we want to tell.
I can't remember. Did they do it for
So
every episode?
I
I think
don't
it was. I think it was just the
remember.
first.
I believe when they actually like destroy something significant to Tokyo, they make sure they said it.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It's funny that they only do it for the first one because, like, I think of Apothecary Diaries, every single episode starts with no references to people are in actual history. Please, it's not a time setting
Everything
that
is
you
a
also
coincidence.
don't know. Yeah, it's not set in a particular country that you may or may not also can infer from our story and or setting. Please don't come and
Please do
sue
not
us.
sue us.
Yeah, like every single
Exactly.
episode has that disclaimer.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, without further ado, let's get into the characters. Now we have three. We'll call it 2.5 main characters. I feel like it's really just two, and then Lisa. You want to say four? What do you think then? 9, 12, Lisa, and who? Who would be your fourth?
The investigator,
Yeah,
the head of
Shibazaki.
Shibazaki. He's for sure
Okay.
main character. He
Yeah.
basically got introduced like episode 1, and it was around for the entirety of the anime, and was like an
That's fair.
integral part in like every single piece that was laid out.
That's fair. So yeah, we got like three main characters, and then we have two that are considered. You could consider main characters, but they were like one was introduced halfway through, and the other kind of was just like a whiny, needy, just like follow along puppy dog that just was frustrating to no end. But yeah, we had, as I said, the main two characters on the poster, 9 and 12, and then Lisa, who's also on the poster. And then you had Kenjiro Shibazaki, who was the detective, as Tyler said. And then another one, which was introduced about halfway through. Their name is 5, which we'll get to why they're named numbers later. But I think that these characters outside of Lisa were all thoroughly well thought out characters. I truly did not like Lisa's character at all. Just I understand why she was there. I understand why she was integral to the plot. I just didn't think that any of her story clicked with me and just made her sympathetic at all. I don't know. Am I
No,
alone in here, or do you guys have similar sentiments?
no, I mean, you're not alone. I
Yeah.
the frustrating part about her character is that we're introduced to her like even before, I think, like 9 and 12, because she's getting bullied at school, and
Yeah.
then they can't remember if it was 9 or 12, whatever. The one like happy cheery boy sort of like rescues her per se, like just jumps into the pool and is like, "Oh my gosh, it's so much fun to swim in your clothes." And the bullies are like, "He's weird, let's get out of here." And then she gave us like this really powerful line of like, he has a very sunny disposition and the other guy's got eyes as cold as ice. And you're like, okay, deep deep thought for this girl. Hopefully this continues. And then she just becomes a durr, and I'm like, oh boy, wow, you are just a sack of rocks in the head, huh? Like there's nothing
Yep.
going on. Lights are on, but no one's there, sort of thing. Cool. I feel bad for how her character was written because I thought she could have been more impactful and
So much
powerful.
better.
Well, because she's dragged along for like two very different but like meaningful purposes in the story. Not to get into spoilers yet, but like there's a reason why she sticks around throughout the entire thing. But like there's no real like weight behind it.
Yeah.
It's just it like they make an excuse every single time to like keep her strung along, and I'm like, tell me why, because she's just a sack of bones at this point. Like you're basically just carrying around a body pillow. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be mean. Her character is poorly written. Shame
Yeah.
on the mangaka for writing her in that fashion, but like, God.
Oh, it was an original series, so there was no manga.
Oh, that's right.
for
It wasn't
so.
original. Shame on you, Mappa, for writing her like dog shit.
Drew, do you share any of these sentiments? We can wake you up here.
Yeah, I do.
He was deep in thought.
100%. She's a plot device. She's there to show the human side of 12, to be like, oh, he's not just who the story portrays him to be. And then much later on, again, no spoilers, but she does act like a sack of potatoes. There is one very specific part I will get into where she is, yeah, but there are other ways to portray those characters. There are other mechanics that we can use. Like, it's not like creating a character like this is something new, because you have hundreds of animes out there that have like a female character or someone at the school that the new characters go to that interact with the main characters. Like, you can go as far back as like Ranma's wife at school. Jeez,
Yeah,
I'm bad.
I
But
can't
anyways,
remember. Yeah,
but there's always the character in the high school who's like onto it, and like they're like, oh, I'm suspicious, or I'm aware of something. And usually they have like a drive. They're like, oh, like, I want to be a news reporter when I grow up, or I'm really into the occult club. Like, the reason they're interacting with those characters is because they have like a background and a reason, whereas she's just like, guess this is my life now.
yeah.
Yeah.
To add on to like, and again, not spoilers. They could have made that character a guy too.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
it didn't have to be a girl. I think it's more egregious that they chose to have a girl and have her be like pitiful. Yeah, pitiful. Just
Yep.
the one that you are most frustrated with in the whole story, and it's like, of course you would choose that character to be female. So
Yeah.
it's a part of the times though too. Back then, it's like you didn't have a lot of strong female characters. So it's like,
I mean,
who should we make the
we were
lackey?
starting to move away from that, but at the same
That's
time, like, yeah,
we were starting, but it was also a time of like, we're making female characters more impactful and like center stage, but we're also still going to exploit them to no end. This was a
yeah.
situation where they were just like, let's just make a character in the most pathetic fashion as possible, and oh, by the way, they're female too. Sorry.
Yeah, but aside from her, I think 9 and 12, the two main characters in this series, I think that they were phenomenal. I think they were well written. I think that their motives were they had great motives, like once it was finally revealed, and we'll get into spoilers here shortly. I think that they were the two that were supposed to carry the show, and they did carry the show. And then, as well as Shibazaki, the investigator, I think that he was also well written and well portrayed as the, you know,
Yeah,
with
agreed.
his own dealings of why he was doing, what he was doing. So I think that he was another well written character. It was just unfortunate that your one female lead who wasn't introduced halfway through the show was just burlap sap essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So, without further ado, let's just get into spoilers and into the plot. So, as we've kind of been alluding to, two boys causing terror in Japan, and we literally mean terror. They are bombing buildings and blowing up cars and blowing up other things. Like they are just wreaking havoc. However, they're making sure that nobody dies throughout
Mm-hmm.
all of these explosions and everything else, which is an interesting kind of twist to everything. So I really liked that once I kind of, once that first building blew up and they're like, there were 0 casualties and like 12 injuries, and that was it. And they were all minor. There was no major injuries. And it was just like, okay, so they're doing this on purpose. Like you could probably guess that they were doing this on purpose. It's just a matter of why were they doing this and what are their motives? And I feel like the further down the bunny hole we went in learning about their past and how they grew up, really put into perspective, like, yeah, they had the motive, but at the end of the day, is terrorism the right thing to do? Probably not.
Well, when you're tortured at a young age and basically tried to be made into weapons of mass destruction to be used against a former power during a particular war that might or might not have dropped a giant bomb on you, yeah, maybe you take your actions a little bit beyond what is reasonable,
Normal.
we'll say. Yeah. I so to the point on that you were making on like how we kept getting more and more of their backstory, what I really appreciated about this anime in particular that I feel like a lot of other one season encapsulated stories miss on, whether they're one why can't I think of the term, not with any sort of manga behind it. They are entirely new
Original
series.
series?
Yeah, sure, original. I don't know why I forgot the word original for a second. Whether they're
You're good.
originals or they're they're based on a manga, a lot of them fall into this trap of like we have to make it so mysterious that you don't find out until the very end. But the entirety of the plot is baked around finding out that backstory or the mystery. Terran Residence was like, no, we're gonna keep you hooked by like making all of these episodes based around like the boys are gonna bomb a location. Here's
But why?
here's the riddle behind it, and you're like so intrigued with how the police, the investigators are gonna uncover it, and then how they're going to skirt around like some of the other, other parties at bay that are in play that are trying to impact the two guys as well, 9 and 12. Like there's all of that going on each and every episode, and you almost forget like, oh, why are they doing this again? You're like, you just kind of think that they're doing it just because at some points. You're like, oh, this is just a game to them. But then you find out towards the end, at the last 3 episodes, 4 episodes, there's this whole giant backstory to the two of them and like where they came from and how they turned out the way they are, and kind of getting to the deeper purpose of why they're doing it too. So I was really impressed how they were able to navigate that and keep people focused on the mystery investigatory bombing piece to it, we'll say terroristic piece to it, and then still stringing along this whole thing of like, hey, subtle reminder, there's a whole backstory we haven't even gotten to yet. And you're like, oh, there's more. So that was really impressive. I thought that was the biggest sort of the biggest positive aspect to this anime that made it kind of stand out a lot of amongst all the other ones that are in like a similar, one season completion.
Yeah, their drip feed of everything was very well paced, and like I feel like each episode they turned the faucet on for like a split second to give us like a good amount of information to where we're like, okay, we can piece this together, but where's this missing piece? And then you watch another episode or two and you find that piece and you're like, cool, where's the next one?
Yeah.
Eventually, the whole puzzle comes together. But Drew, I mean, was there anything that stood out to you plot wise that you thoroughly enjoyed or did not enjoy about it outside of Lisa? Because I'd rather not talk about her anymore.
Not revisit her.
Yeah.
I really liked the episode. It's one of the early ones where they put the bomb in the police station.
Yeah.
and they essentially like give them every single clue to say this is where it is. And it's one of the early Shizazaki episodes because he's working in like archives. He's slowly figuring it out, and all these big detectives are like, "No, it can't be that easy. Like this isn't the answer." And he's like, "No, it is." And to see how that went down, and to see how the characters, like, they're not doing anything fantastical. They're not doing anything outside the realm of like our current base of technology. They're like, he's borrowing a jacket from a fast food courier. He's wearing the helmet down. Like, he knows the delivery process. It's all like accessible information that anyone in that era, in that place of Japan could get. And so it's a lot of their plans hinge on very like grounded processes. It's not like later on in Death Note where like obviously fantastic things are happening with the Death Note. It's logical is what I enjoy, and that all of the pieces to the puzzles as they're falling, like as we're learning about like their history, or we're learning about what could happen next, or possibly like the new character that gets introduced midway through, like all of it makes sense, and it doesn't feel too much like this was rushed, except for like again the last few episodes where they're just like finish the story. um but even still, like, it leads up to a good conclusion, and it does a very good job of telling a story without making you like believe that there's too much, like, I don't know, people get mad at plot and like, why didn't character A do this, or why didn't character B see this? It's like, well, that's the plot. Like, we wouldn't have a movie without it. But a lot of theirs is, again, I'm backtracking, makes sense and it's logical.
Mm.
That's it.
Yeah, I will disagree with you that I feel like the
Oh,
last few episodes were rushed. I feel like if anything, they were kind of drawn out.
okay.
Um, I don't think that because if you think of realistic terms, when we see something on the news, like there is a serial killer, there's something on the loose, or like there's things going bad around the world, like these problems tend to nowadays, not necessarily like 80s, 90s or whatever. These things tend to resolve relatively quickly. Like there's some, manpower put behind them and they try to fix the problem ASAP and figure out who did it and why they did it and stop them. And I think that this story was true. It's like they escalated it so much at the end because they were running out of time. They met a detective who was as smart as them, figured out their, riddles relatively easily, and is just like, cool, we need to do something. We need to escalate our plans because we did not take this into account. So I feel like them escalating as to what they were doing around Japan, I think that that was fine. But them going about and doing it the way they did, I think that the last two episodes or three episodes were really revolved around the major bomb that they had, which I guess we're in spoiler territory. So, very beginning, it seems like they had stole plutonium or basically to make a nuclear bomb, but it really turns out they stole a miniature nuclear bomb that was already completed.
Mm.
And so, for them to be like, okay, cool, we're just going to use our last thing, and then take the last two episodes to say, hey, here's your riddle, figure it out. If you don't, it's going to go off. And I think that it was slow and methodical. Like to take 2 out of 11 episodes, like it's a lot of time for just this one puzzle, but at the same time, it's not entirely too much. It's not super fast to get through it. Because their first plot was like one whole episode, their second plot was another whole episode. It's just like I feel like that the pacing for it was relatively well done. I
Hmm.
don't think that they took anything too slowly or too quickly.
No, I'm in agreement. I will say the one portion I agree with Drew on that might be the piece that you're overlooking is like the
Okay.
very very end of
Mm,
episode 11
where
where
the nuke
like
goes off and there's no power for anything.
no, I'm even talking about that, right? Because that's
Okay.
that's the conclusion of their big master plan, right? Is the nuclear bomb goes off in the stratosphere. It doesn't kill anyone, but it basically creates this giant EMP that knocks out technology, like all of the towers and everything for like some crazy 100,
Yeah.
200-kilometer radius, right?
All the electronics are dead unless you kept them in like a lead storage box.
Basically, yeah. But then there's this, like, the last, I don't even know how long it was, technically, like 7 to 10 minutes ish, where they're like frolicking in an abandoned warehouse in like the middle of nowhere, and Shibazaki comes to visit, and then the U.S. military shows up and a sniper takes him the fuck out, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? That's what happens.
Yeah.
I think there was always the expectation that the two main characters would die, just because of like they're terrorists at the end of the day, whether they were going to get captured and killed or
As
whether they were going
sympathetic
to.
as they were and their motives were, it's like, yeah, they were set up. They
Well,
were written to
Yeah,
die or be captured.
I want to go back to that comment though in a second. But like I think their inevitable end was slightly, I don't even want to classify it as rushed. It was very like spur of the moment. It seemed like, where like they had to wrap it up. Maybe, yes, they spent a little too long focusing on them playing soccer and splashing water at each other and listening to the same music with each one of us has a little earbud, and oh my gosh, it's a bonding moment. And then bang bang, 2 in the back of the skull, bitch.
He got shot in the chest.
One of them did.
No, I think 12 got shot in the back of the head.
Oh, he did?
No,
Yeah.
12 got shot in the chest and he went down immediately. Like he
Okay.
got shot in the heart and he got.
I
yeah.
thought one of
He
them
didn't
got.
get shot.
I thought one of them got shot in the back of the skull from the helicopter. Oh yeah.
If it was 9.
To to portray
yeah.
the scene, if we've done a bad job, U.S. military helicopters came flying in, and they just took a pot shot at 12 out of nowhere. They were just like, we got eyes on him, and Shibazaki's like, no, don't shoot. And they're just like, we don't speak Japanese. Bang.
as the American or U.S.
Yeah.
military would.
Yeah. So I think that part was like the weird part. It was a nice little conclusion with Lisa. Like the only moment that showed her like showing any resemblance of like not emotion, just like self, I don't know, development, I guess I'd say, like self growth, like being able to be independent of the two, because she basically, once she was rescued in episode 1, she was like, well, I'm attached to you now forever. Have fun. I'm just gonna become a giant tumor for you.
Yeah.
And then when she like got cast off on her own, she was like, I can do things by myself now. And I was like, oh, good job. Very
Going to
good.
school and getting bullied.
I know, yeah.
Even in my opinion, I still feel like that last episode was still well paced, because as you said, it's
No,
like, okay, they're sitting in the warehouse, but
it's-
it's just like, cool. Do you want to see a full episode of them playing, having fun, and being kids again?
No,
And then just have like the episode end with Shibazaki showing up, and then you have a full episode of here's why we did it. Shibazaki tell our story, and then the fucking U.S. military comes in.
it's not the pacing. It's not the pacing. I think just the events that took place at the end seemed sporadic. Like it seemed like there was like, we have to end it somehow. Let's have a jovial moment of like, we're gonna get out of this scot-free, only to have it abruptly end. And it was just weird to have this be like a 3-minute session of them like, oh my god, we are high school kids, let's have fun, to just like the U.S. military coming in, just be like, get down, Mr. President, bang. Like I think that part was just, it was a little awkward and clunky. Again, like the pacing is fine. It was just like how the end events transpired were the weird pieces to it. And I feel like it's warranted to make that critical, be like that critical of the ending sequence, because it is an original. It's not like we can go to the manga and be like, well, that's how it is in the manga, and then be like, well, yeah, okay, that makes sense then. But like in this situation, I would have liked the atomic bomb to go off, technology gets shut down, they get visited by Shibazaki, maybe they try to turn themselves in, right? And they're going to turn themselves in, and then it's a confrontation with the US or something. Or maybe like someone that they knew of in the police department just like, no, I'm gonna take this into my own hands now, pop, right? Like,
yeah, the old man who's on his deathbed just comes out rolling out, and he's just like, you children must die.
Yeah, you're my test subjects, and I'll finish you however I want. Bang bang. Like it's just the ending sequence was like weird. It had to happen. I wish it happened in a different manner, but that's not to say though that the ending wasn't still great. I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure.
It had a lot of meaning again with like that the only part that I actually enjoyed Lisa in was when she went to go visit their graves, like staked in the posts with the numbers on it across the field of all the other numbers of all the other kids that were died horrible,
Fucking brutally
tragic,
murdered.
tragic deaths because they were pumped full of this smart serum. I don't know, whatever the fuck they called it.
Yeah.
Brando,
But
that's what plants
You
great.
said you wanted to revisit my comment of the boys being like their motives, there was sympathetic to their
Yeah.
motives. Like I feel like by the end it's like I understand why I am sympathetic to why they did everything. Do I still like at the beginning of this episode do we think that terrorism is the right act?
So
No, but they were developed for that. So like I think that why they did everything was a bit more sympathetic, especially cuz they didn't
no, see
kill anything.
that's where I disagree. Like the non-killing aside, which was a very
Right.
like that was an interesting aspect that people you like picked up on pretty quickly, right? Because then it came out like a couple episodes in the investigation. They're like, weird, we've
And then
had two terrorist attacks and no one's died. That's kind of odd, right? And you're like,
And
oh
then
yeah.
they introduced Five, and Five's like, let's just kill everybody and see if they can stop me.
Five was locked and loaded the moment that she was introduced. She was in the fucking
True
control.
American.
She was in the control van and was just like, "Hey, I need you to do this." And they're like, "Sorry, we can't." And then she goes, "Oh yeah, I think my Glock would say otherwise." And they're like, "Right away, madam." And I'm like, "God, armed to the teeth for no reason." My argument though is that with the story they built up of them being, recruited from orphanages
Orphanage.
around Japan and pulled into this secret testing facility to be trained effectively into becoming weapons of mass destruction for Japan, like Mensa level smart type that could navigate through any sort of problem solving. Like you would think that your whole goal, if you had a revenge path, if you had like a vendetta against anyone, it would be to find the fucks that did that to you and not just blow shit up. You know what I mean? Like like the investigatory piece to them, becoming terrorists, right? Like the police investigation uncovered more to their own backstory than it seemed like they were willing to or wanted to go into. Like they were just like, they were fine being like, we don't care, we escaped. For all we care, those fucks could all be dead. Like, oopsie poopsie, right? We just want to send a message. And I'm like, awesome. Why? Like it feels like their anger and mistrust towards anyone and everyone in society was sort of misguided, and it should have been directed towards the ones that perpetrated the atrocities that they had to go through. Like that made the most sense. And then it was weird again to reiterate, because I feel like this is the biggest piece of it, that all of that backstory was uncovered by the police just investigating the crimes. Like they found out everything. And it seemed like it was their, like Shibazaki's towards the end, it was like his motivation to resolve everything was to be like, I'm actually kind of like, not to say he was siding with them, but he's like, he showed sympathy to them, and he's like, well, what did they go through that landed them in this position? And then he found out, and he's like, oh God, okay.
But it also goes hand in hand with why Shibazaki was put in archive duty, because he was investigating higher up people, and it just so happened that these higher up people were the fucks that were messing with the kids.
The case that got him sent off the investigation team to begin with was one of the doctors that was a part of that whole testing facility. Like, I get it. I get the tie-in. It makes sense. But again, in my brain, it'd have been like the terrorist attacks should have been a motivation to get more information uncovered from where they came from. Like that should have been the purpose, right? They were just like, we're going to blow up one of the biggest buildings in Tokyo. And then it's like, all right,
Okay,
now what? And they're like,
Yeah.
well, let's make it fun now since we have the police's attention. Riddle me this, Batman. And you're like, oh boy. This seems like it's gonna get weird.
Drew,
But
you have any other plot points you want to talk about? Any sympathies? Any just anything?
Yeah.
Because you've been pretty silent this
No,
episode.
no, no. I love it when he goes on like that because it ramps up
Just
it
wind it
ramps
up.
up how I feel, but in a more efficient method. I was just browsing before we started recording, thinking I've heard this story before of genetic people super weapons, and I stumbled upon a show from 2000 and what 2000 called Dark Angel, starring Jessica Alba, who is, get this, a modified human escaped from a facility that is breeding children to be super weapons.
Dude, you just unlocked. Sorry, real quick. You just fucking unlocked a portion of my brain that I haven't thought of in a very long time. I haven't heard the name Dark Angel, the TV series, in a fucking long ass time.
Not a minute, an
I haven't
hour.
heard of it.
Right.
I've heard of it 0
Oh,
times in my life.
it was like in the time of like Jennifer Gardner's like Electra. It was just like that kind of time era, and I'm just like,
Yeah, where
oh
it was
boy.
like the femme fatales, right?
Yeah, it was like the femme fatale era, and then you got also like
Alias.
Kate Beckinsale and Underworld and all that shit. It's just
Yep.
like,
You could just admit, you could just say it was your time as a little kid being like, Jesus, is this what women are like? I think I like it. Like, you could just say it with like, it opened your eyes. Yeah, to the female form.
oh,
Like-
but yeah, no, sorry, Dark Angel is just, you just unlocked a memory there. Anyways, continue,
Perfect.
buddy.
But no, it was like the whole plot. I agree with Magically Average to say that I thought they were going to do their terrorism, be like, tell us about blah 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 pharmaceuticals, or else. Nope, no, we're just going to do a terrorism.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't know. I that's where I wanted it to go, but like having the police do that story is fine enough. It does intertwine nicely, but when it's an original and you don't have like a definitive motive for your anti-heroes in this case, it's part of what lost me my first time watching it back when it was releasing, because I'm old. But when I watched it a second time, I'm like, okay, it does carry that progression. I am interested, I am hooked, but I would have liked to see a little bit more on 9 and 12's end of like, oh yeah, remember when so and so did this? We're gonna go like blow up his place of business. Or we're gonna go stop the shipping company that brought in the drugs to change us. Like that would have made more sense to me, but again, I don't write anime.
And like, but to add on to what you were saying though, it would have made a lot more sense to the whole ending sequence as well, because the fact that like Shibazaki was trying to protect them was just kind of a weird twist to it all. Like you could start to see towards the end, like the last few episodes, that there was like there was at the beginning it was like, fuck these kids, fuck them, I want them dead. You hear me? DED dead. And then like the last few episodes, they're like, hang on, well maybe we could just talk with them and just have a little chat, figure things out. And I'm like, dude, at this point they blew up like 5 buildings and an airplane. Like I know the airplane wasn't their fault, and the subway wasn't their fault either.
That was them adjacent.
Yeah, but still, I'm like your country has been war torn basically at this point with the amount of destruction that they've caused, and now you're like, I think I can change. I can change him, Dad. I swear. Like I'm like, that part was
Just
so frustrating.
misunderstood.
Yeah. I swear I can fix him, Daddy. Like it was that part that frustrated me. And then again, to what Drew and I were saying, like
you said didn't have a daddy.
whatever. Test
Anyways,
tube baby
sorry.
daddy. But like it's more the fact that like if there was if they had directed their acts of violence and terrorism towards uncovering their own backstory and trying to find the people that perpetrated those like horrible crimes, right from the very beginning, that would have made much more sense. On like the police starting to pick apart the pieces and be like, wow, there's some like string of events that have taken place that like they're starting to align, and then they can uncover like, oh, they're related to this pharmaceutical thing, yada yada. And then there was like a merging point, right? But basically it was just acts of terrorism on one line, and then the police were like, oh, plot. And they never crossed. The only time they crossed is when they met at the end and they got shot by the US. It was the only point. So it's just like that part was just it was the most frustrating piece to it. But again, as an anime, as an original, I still thought it was great. Like I still was thoroughly entertained.
That's what I want to say is just let's get into our final thoughts and our rankings. So if that's your final thought, then what is your ranking on the show?
I'd give it an 8 out of 10. I would say that in terms of an original anime series that is a one and done, it had one of the most complete stories, one of the better like conclusions, I would say, to a story as well. Albeit the manner in which it was done might have been a little over the top and ridiculous, but it still had the conclusion that you wanted, right? I thought all but the one character that shall not be mentioned at this point because her name is aggravating me, were fantastically written, had like deep, meaningful backstories, had some character growth, we'll say, even within the short confined window of 11 episodes. It was one of the best, most complete single season stories for an anime.
Fair enough. Drew, do you have any final thoughts or just scores in general for this?
Mine's on the very much the same page. Like I was thinking around an 8 as well. I enjoyed, like, when I first watched it the very first time, like this is before Mappa was like hitting home runs daily. So even back then I was like, the animation quality is great. There's attention to detail. Like you rarely see it in big like landscape scenes that every window is drawn, that characters exist, and that these cities are lived in. So like if you watch the typical slice of life shows, and even if you watch stuff that's more current, they don't animate faces anymore. Even sometimes people are just gray blobs. Again, Mappa was making a name for themselves back then. They didn't cut corners. I'm always going to be that guy that's the fan of backgrounds, but when you put so much care into your show to make it essentially like an animated copy of what's real, and you actually use like real shots of what these places look like rather than just fudging the numbers and using broad brushstrokes, it makes things more believable, and it gives more connection to the characters, to the setting, to the plot. So that when something happens, whether like there's an accident on the freeway in those late episodes, or they're just running to escape a situation, like it feels like it could happen. And they do a real good job like getting you into that mindset, taking you away from reality for a little bit. And overall, I do really enjoy it. I do recommend it, and I gotta update my my anime list with it soon.
Fair enough. Yeah, for me, I'm actually gonna give this one a bit higher than y'all. I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I was able to look past you, as y'all said, the ending, which kind of came out of nowhere. Which, yeah, when you think about it really thoroughly, yes, it did come out of nowhere. But at the same time, none of us can really come up with a detailed way of how we would want it to end instead. So at this point, I'm like, you know what? I'm good with it.
I thought my idea was good. I liked mine.
Yeah, sure. But at the same time, yeah, no, I thought that everything was well thought out. As I said before, the drip feed of information where they would turn on the faucet every once in a while to give you a good chunk of information to keep you looking for more breadcrumbs to fill in the missing puzzle pieces, I thought was brilliant. Other than the character who shall not be named, I think everybody else, all the side characters, all the main characters were brilliantly written as well. Really, it's just that one character that brings it all down that probably would give it a lesser score. But the set pieces were fantastic. I think that the motives were intriguing. Everything about this show was, I mean, not to say terrorism is fun, but it was a fun show. I thought it was good.
You heard it here, folks.
Yeah, I know, right?
Frankfurter. Quote.
Yeah. Woohoo! That quote out of context won't be awful.
Look for our upcoming stickers at a local con near you.
Or don't. But yeah, no, I would give this a 9 out of 10. I think that this has been something that I'm glad I watched. I'm glad I finally got it off the backlog, because this has been on the backlog for forever. And at first when I had picked this, I will admit I thought it was a different show altogether. My brain went to, like, you know what? I want to give this another chance, because I watched the first episode and it made no fucking sense to me. And I thought it was Chaos Child, which is completely different series and show. So it was a very good, like, kind of like, okay, no, this is a lot better than I was expecting. The show that we were gonna watch. So no, I was very happy with it. We do have our next show picked out, but that will remain a mystery until next episode. Thank you all for joining us this week. We greatly appreciate it. If you want more of us, Magically Average and I, we record weekly episodes of Baka&Co podcast. We name it Baka Bites. So go check that out on your podcast platform of choice or on YouTube. And if you want shorter form content, we also make some shorts on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and Instagram. So take a look there at Bakacopodcast. You can find us everywhere. So if you want shorter form, there you go. But until next time, y'all, Spark Triumph. We'll see you then.